thank you all for being a part of this, the city of ours, and as it expands and grows, thank you all for making this city one of the top cities in the state, in South Carolina. Just before we get started, I think I'm going to lean to my colleague. Would you lead us in a word of grace?
My pleasure. Bow your heads, please. Heavenly Father, please bless this gathering, this city, these folks that are so instrumental in our lives and the success of Columbia, South Carolina. Please give us the wisdom today as we do the city's work, and bless all the citizens of this great place. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. We have approval of our minutes.
Motion to approve?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that these minutes be approved.
Thank you.
If you approve them, would you indicate by saying aye?
Aye.
Aye. It is done. Thank you very much. Several things we want to do today, and the reason we have some things listed on this agenda is that we've talked about some of these things, but we have not affirmatively, nor consensually agreed on how we ought to handle these things. Our street naming, of course, and that was an issue that was brought to our attention by the Leroy Moss and that building there, that recreational building. We're talking about the Virginia Belford building and the naming of that room. I think the room is already there. And we looked at the Resource Center at Sarah Nance at the Belfield Center. One of the things that we want to do today, of course, is to tie up some of these loose ends, things that we've talked about, but not affirmatively brought them into full view nor into full play. One of the issues that I think we need to tackle today is, and before we bring it to council, because all of the things that we've talked about, that we talk about, needs to be brought to council, needs to be approved, and council does that. Is that right,
That's
Madam
correct.
Clerk?
Yes, sir.
And we want to make sure that all of those things are done correctly and in order. We know that the Virginia Belford naming of that room is still applicational, and we've done some work on the revising and the reticulating of our applicational process. Is that right, Ms. Benjamin?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay. Leroy Moss, we need to make an affirmative decision on that and to see how that moves in the fabric of our city. We looked at the Virginia Sarah Nance project in the Belfield Center and renaming that the Sarah Nance Resource Center. So let's chime in, let's all of us chime in to so if we can get a handle on this thing, on this first issue, and that's the renaming of this projects, so that we are able to bring them to council and consensually approve them.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
So
ma'am. I'm sorry.
if you don't mind, I'd like to start by kind of backing up just a little bit to talk about the policy and kind of the framework. A lot of what you all have done and a lot of the great things that this committee does is to look at policy and to set policy. And so we have had, like Reverend McDowell has said, several discussions about street naming, several discussions about facilities and buildings and the process for which by we will be doing those namings. And to get some order to all of this process, we have revisited some of our policies, our processes to do that. So as you all will recall, we had a lot of discussion about the street naming in the past. You all worked very diligently on an application about the street naming. And so as we've had these continuous discussions about naming the buildings and naming sites and those types of things, we took some time and went back and reviewed the policy and reviewed the application and made some tweaks to those things so it can better better line up with a process and a procedure that council will be satisfied with and that would work best to facilitate these things happening. And so as you all remember, there was a policy back in 2017 that talked about street namings and talked about facility namings. And so in your package, you'll see a copy of the policy that relates to street naming and also the policy that relates to facility room and site naming. And then you'll see the application. So in order to bring all these things together so that they are all on the same page, we went back and made some tweaks. So the first thing you'll see in your packet is the honorary street naming policy. And so in order to be in compliance with the policy and the application, and for all those things to run smoothly together, we did make some adjustments for the street naming, we made some adjustments to the application. So you'll see that there's a edit in red that talks about the application will be completed by the applicant or a sponsoring council member, because you all wanted to have multiple council members agree or put forward a request for a street naming. Again, so that you all have consensus, so that you all are on the same page, you all instituted that requirement. So we added that language again to make sure it reflects what's in the application. So that's a simple add to that policy. And then on the back of that form, there was also a policy related to facility and site naming. So because we have in the past named rooms after individuals of distinction, we wanted to add that addition of room, because that's something that we are doing. So the policy reflects the actions that council has taken. So we added room where appropriate to make sure that that whole practice of naming a room after someone is documented in the policy. So that's been added.
Now, that has not been done in the past.
Yes, sir,
Is
that's
that correct?
correct. That's correct. We
And be-
added that.
And because it has not been done in the past, that's why we're doing the policy.
So it has been
I'm sorry.
done, but it hasn't been in the policy language.
It's been done, been implemented, but it has not been a real thorough doing of that document.
So to make the policy up to date and reflect all the actions that you all are taking when you name things, we added room. So room, facility, room, and site have been added to the policy to
Okay.
update it to reflect the fact that you all have in the past named rooms after individuals.
And
Mr.
that
Chair,
was 1990, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chair, you just, since you're making that point, if you think about your council conference room, for example, at City Hall is Kent Washington, or Mr. Henry Hopkins at the Eau Claire Print Facility, that conference room, and
Manley.
Mr. Manley, in both of their names. So it has been done, but as Ms. Benjamin's saying, it was never, since you're going through all this, we're like, let's put it all in there to reflect the practice that's been taken for many years, actually, at
Yeah.
times.
And you see, it would seem to me, and I think you guys can sort of chime in on this, it would seem to me that the policies are necessary as we grow the city. The policies are necessary because even if they are in, I shouldn't say granted, but even if they are and have been a part of our posturing, we need to make sure that the policies are adhered to, whether it be that or whether it be something else that we're gonna talk about later on this
Yes, sir.
morning. But I think you're right.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I would like to say that I think this is a significant upgrade to the process. And in my mind, what it really does is it aligns what I think should be the effort necessary and the
right.
consensus
That's right.
of the community for these types of naming outcomes. So I think this is, and I want to thank staff for doing such a good job of tightening up
Yes,
this
sir.
and making it just much more procedural and,
Yes.
and less likely that there's going to be any controversy. So I think this is such a huge step forward, and I'm very happy with where we're at this point.
Absolutely. We're not doing it, but we're not doing it with the seat of our pants.
Correct.
But we have procedural kinds of things that can take place before that is done. The Virginia Belford,
Bedford,
what did I say?
I don't know.
Belfield,
something.
Belfield. Yeah, I have trouble with
Just
Belfield.
for the record, I got problems with it too now.
It is extremely important that, going forward, I think that's the right thing to do.
So do you need an endorsement of this new form?
So we just wanted you all to be kind of aware of the things we're adding. Once you all are aware of it, we will have to take a resolution back to council
That's
for
correct.
this policy to reflect that those updates have been made.
That's correct.
And that will have to be approved. And so we wanted to make sure that you all, since you're the Administrative Policy Committee, that you were familiar with those changes, you were in agreement with those changes, and then we would move forward with that process.
Did you see any issues in the?
No, I think this is I feel really good about us specifying what this policy covers, and it's a very clear process. It's not gonna be a surprise because council's involved, staff is involved more heavily in the front end, so I'm fine with it.
Okay.
I'm fine with it moving forward to council.
Okay,
Okay,
good.
so before we leave this, I did want to mention that we made some edits to the policy to reflect the information on the application that you all had updated. And we updated the application a little bit too, so I'll talk about that in 1 second. But we did make some reference to where signage would be. So if you see that in the policy as well, there's been some discussion on whether the signage would be inside or outside. And so we've added some language to say that if it's if the facility is being named, then the signage would be on the inside and outside. So someone would see that signage if they come to that particular building that's been named.
Do we need
For
to
someone.
designate that in terms of a plaque on the outside of the building?
So we didn't get that much into that detail, Reverend McDowell, just because we know that some facilities are different. Some facilities will be glass, some facilities will be brick, but we did want to say that it would be on the outside of the building.
Okay.
So that at least that reference is made, but not get too stuck on the details, just in case, the plaque size has to change for some reason, or
I'm
it
glad
has
it's
to be.
a plaque and it's not letters.
We talked a lot about it mirroring the signage that's in the inside. And typically in the inside of a building, you all have the dates of dedication, you have the mayor and the council that are present, that are presiding when that facility is named or dedicated. And then you have the person's name, so it will mirror those types of signs.
Okay.
And there's a standard and a process for that signage.
And that's what we're doing now.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, I would say as our rebranding process continues to evolve, we'll get more and more clear and concise about
That's
that as
correct.
well. So I think we're definitely headed in the right direction.
Absolutely. And in addition, the rooms that Ms. Wilson was referring to, we talked about a little bit earlier, Mr. Washington, those type of rooms, that the signage would be on the outside of that room so that someone would know that that's, Mr. Washington's room. Like in City Hall, we have a little blue sign that's outside that conference room that shows that that conference room is named for Mr. Washington. So we would have a similar process for rooms that are in facilities and in
Well,
buildings.
Pam, similarly, and comparatively, we look at the Moss room. We would take that same verbiage from the inside and place it on the outside in terms of signage.
Yes, sir, that is what we're talking about, is having that similar signage inside
All
and
right.
outside. And moving forward, kind of setting that standard for other facilities going forward.
Okay.
But I think, just to underscore that point, that's really key and important why we highlighted it, because we didn't want to make any assumptions, but, that would be the recommendation. So if you all are fine with the highlighted, inside and outside of the facility and outside of the room, then yes, sir, you're right because I know that's been a lot of topic of discussion about the Leroy Moss Multipurpose Center at Hyatt Park. And I think going forward, as you mentioned with Ms. Bedford's pending naming, the Sarah Nance facility at the Belfield Center.
That's correct.
I think we've just got to be crystal clear going forward that that is the way we're going to address it. And so that would mean for the Leroy Moss Multipurpose Center, which has historically had the signage on the inside of that facility, it will now also be placed on the outside. I think without getting into the weeds, unless you all want us to, if the intent, and we and the staff, we think it should be a plaque. We're not talking about, putting major letters on the facility, but a very appropriate plaque similar to what is inside the facility would go on the outside. Now, if you all, just for the purposes of clarity, with any applicants or families going forward, if you feel like we need to reference signage being a plaque, but don't get into any more specific than that, because what I'm trying to avoid here, just speaking frank, is the record being clear and reflecting what the intentions are of the seated council going forward, and to Ms. Benjamin's point, it then being put into policy by the mechanism of a resolution. I think sometimes what has probably happened, and I have looked back at the record with Erica on some of these, it isn't clear in the record. And
You said
it is
what?
not clear in the record at the time that the
Even it-
previous years ago, 1995.
1994, 95,
Right.
all right.
And so because it wasn't clear then, and there was no formal policy established, it has left room for some interpretation. So many years have passed, and we've moved on. I think you all are doing a wonderful thing to try to commit it to the record the way you really intend for it to be. So if the intent is not for the facilities to, like some facilities would have on the building what it is, but for it to be designated with a marker or plaque, then we may need to put that in here.
Yeah, I would think that would be the reasonable way, instead of high and lifted up with letters. It just doesn't fit right,
Okay.
and it doesn't sound right. But it would seem incrementally, we can consensually approve this.
For sure.
Ma'am?
So we'll
You with me?
make the change
I
of
already said yeah.
marker or plaque from signage. That way, it is really crystal clear of
All
what
right.
that would look like. So
Okay.
we'll make that adjustment.
Now,
Yes, sir.
is that inclusive of all facilities we've talked about?
Yes, sir, that's the intent, is that
Just
it's
for the record,
inclusive.
can we name those things?
So I think what, the next step that we should talk about is the application.
That's correct.
So,
Which
going
had to come before
forward,
council.
yes, sir. We
Yeah.
want to make a practice of everybody completing an application. Like Mr. Brown said, people putting in the effort to want this to take place, they have to complete that application. And so on your next page is that application with some tweaks that we made to make it a little bit more descriptive of what we're talking about. That we're talking about, honorary street namings, the sign toppers will be posted above the city street signs, so everybody's clear on that. We're not gonna take down a street sign and put up your father's name, it's gonna be on top of that, so we wanted to make sure that that's clear. The facility, like we just talked about, it reflects what we said in the policy. We can say inside and outside plaques or markers, and then the room namings will be inside. The placard or the marker will be inside.
I'm sorry, we should have made that adjustment of outside. I think it still says inside on the room.
Okay.
That's a,
Make the adjustment from the,
for outside.
Outside.
The room, yes, we'll make that adjustment. And then we added site naming, because that is another thing that you all will be talking about in the next section, is that there's a desire for there to be sites named after people, and so we added that as another criteria for this application process.
Okay.
And then you'll look down and you'll see the letters of support that have to be provided. We added merchant association because that language is reflected in the policy. And that was a miss, that we didn't add it to the application prior. So again, it's just in line with the letters and the effort, like you said, Mr. Brown, that the person has to put forth in order to complete this application. There are some changes too, it has to be done in writing, some other things, edits we've made at the bottom. And then we have on the second page, made reference to the fact that, made it real clear that we need to know the streets, the intersecting streets for street namings, and that there's no more than 2 signs are permitted, on a street name. So that's one of the changes we've made, because you can't have 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, names on a street sign. And then, just as a procedural process for us, we've added a few more departments to be referenced as staff on the bottom of that application as well, so we can make sure we're crossing our Ts and dotting our Is at Public Works and Public Safety and all those, and support services and Parks and Recreation. Everybody who would touch some of this, we made sure that we check off that we have
And we've done
contacted
some of
them.
that.
Yes,
We've
sir.
done some of that, but we want to make it crystal clear
Exactly.
that this is the policy statement.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then for documentation, we also wanted to put on here when council approves it.
Okay.
So that, we can go back and look and say, okay, that was approved on this date. So moving forward, we'll make these changes, have the resolution approved by you all. And then the intent is to reach out to those individuals who, with Sarah Nance, and
Applicational,
for them to complete the application process.
that's right.
And then once they do that, then it'll come back to you all as a committee and then go to the full council, is the process that we're codifying or concretizing is your word that I love
I
to
forgot that
use.
word. It's been 6 months,
Concretizing.
man.
So we have it all concretized.
Thank you.
I'm stealing that one.
Thank you, Pam. One of the things that I think is probably good for us is that we've talked about these things. The thing is that we've talked about those. We just have not made a concretizing decision. And today, we start that process.
Yes, sir.
So we can consensually agree that on the first item, and that's the naming of those facilities, right?
The process, and
Yeah.
then they'll complete their applications and then bring them to you all. and then-
Check the boxes,
Yes, sir.
and we know
We
we're
got the
okay.
process nailed down.
Okay, thank you, Pam.
Yes,
And-
sir.
And Mr. Chair, and
Yes,
I
ma'am.
think you all are, this is awesome, and you're gonna turn the corner on this. I will say, there's a related matter in the Arts and Historic Preservation Committee regarding public art and how that process, it'll be very similar, I think. Mr. Bailey has worked with staff, Mr. Simons to formulate a very similar policy with the application. I think One Columbia will be involved with that. I know Mr. Bailey has said he was gonna try to get back here to hear this discussion. One of the points, though, with that is the deceased. So we did highlight
is the
that.
what?
Is the word deceased, or the practice with the facility room and sites. I think it's silent as to the streets. It doesn't reference it one way or the other if it's being done posthumously. I think so that infers it can be someone who is alive. In this facility room and site naming policy, I don't know, Ms. Benjamin, if you want to take it from there, but we highlighted the word deceased just because I want to, while we're doing this, if you all prefer for the facility room sites to only be given in honor of a deceased individual, that's the way it's currently worded. Now, with the Arts and Historic Preservation Committee process or referral in that committee about the public art, I'm pretty sure, and Henry can correct me if I'm wrong, that Mr. Bailey, the first iteration of it is, it doesn't address the person has to be deceased. One example would be the pending Don Staley statute, right? So, you know, it probably doesn't need to say that. So then you would have two policies where it isn't for someone posthumously, but this one, as it stands right now, does reflect it being someone who is deceased.
Is that a conversation we need to have today or another time?
Well, I know you all are trying to finalize this policy, but you certainly don't have to have it today. We just wanted to bring it up for your consideration.
I think under the circumstances of how long it's taken to get to this particular moment, that we just move forward with it like it is, and we can always adjust later on. But I'm just afraid of continuing to circle the wagons and have these,
Especially as there's, like,
eventually,
requests in the
yeah,
queue.
eventually somebody's gonna attack one of us at the local grocery store if we don't get some of this stuff going. So that would be my feelings on it.
Okay,
Yes,
all
sir.
right. Well, I'm glad.
And
Ms.
we can, and you're right, you can always come back. I do know of one floating out there that's been suggested of someone who is not deceased, but again, if, once that comes up, if it needs to be adjusted, then you all adjust it.
But we can consensually agree upon it. I'd like to have more information.
Okay.
I'd like to have more information.
About,
The deceased piece,
okay.
and I think Peter is right. And the thing that we've been doing, and we should not have been doing, and that's circling the wagon on some of these things. And what we're trying to do now is not get into that mode of circling the wagon, but forging forward in a straight and positive way. I would be inclined to say, I need more information in the parameters of that person being deceased or not being dead.
Not sure how I'll give you that info, but yes, whatever you need as we
Okay.
move along. We'll, you know, I think it just comes down to y'all thinking more about that, sir. If you,
Okay.
you know, either it's for any individual or it's only for deceased individuals. Right now, the policy says it is for those who are deceased,
Okay,
okay?
okay. Thank you very much. Now, let me see if I can get us back on where we need to be in turn. We coming, Randy, we coming. Consensually, we've agreed upon the naming piece. We consensually agreed upon that. And, of course, we'll report that to council after we get this applicational process.
Yes, sir.
And that's been looked at on both sides of the fence. You've seen it, Peter. You've seen it audited. We okay with that application? So we would go ahead and do that.
Okay, so we will finalize all these edits, we'll finalize the policy revisions
Sounds good.
for resolution, and we'll get that on you all's agenda for approval.
Sounds good.
Okay,
Thank you.
sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Let me call Randy Davis to the mic. Come on, Randy. Talk to us about the naming of the Joseph Azar Memorial Garden. As you know the history of Joe Azar, and you know what he stood for many, many years ago. I shouldn't say many years ago, but Joe was an activist in his own way. He helped protect us in terms of water issues. And of course, out of that has come a real positive movement for that to take place. This is the best thing to do in terms of running it through council, running it through the administrative policy committee, and carrying it to council. So Randy?
Okay. Good morning, everyone. What we have before you is a proposed community garden that was presented to us in 2021. Mr. Joe Azar, who passed away in 2019, has a cousin by the name of William Akel, who presented the idea of a community garden after finding out from Joe Azar, Living Will and Testament, his wishes to construct a community garden in the 29203 community. And so we sought out to find a location, and we landed at T.S. Martin Park. There had been discussions with Mr. Ed Brogdon and Willa Martin Bailey, with a gentleman by the name of Ed Brogdon, to build a community garden. And from there, Mr. Brogdon and Ms. Bailey, as far back as 2014, was discussing the idea of a community garden in the exact location that we're proposing to build a community garden. So Ms. Bailey is the daughter of T.S. Martin, in whom the park is named after. So she had a vision for the park to include a community garden, and Mr. Joe Azar was impressed with a community garden that was built by Mr. Ed Brogdon at a dedication ceremony at Jones Memorial AME Church when he met Mr. Brogdon back in 2017, I believe. So from there, we've met on site in 2021, the summer of 2021, with Mr. William Akel. And yeah, he lives in Las Vegas. So we met on site, and can you show the screen of this here? Yeah, that there. So that's the proposed community garden. And it's located right behind the baseball field at the park. And as you can see by the ledger, it consists of community gardens, an elevated minor garden for disabled, school gardens, flower garden clubs, a compost bin, and the focal point being the community garden for the public, okay? And the vision is to build a collaboration with the school district, particularly W.A. Perry Middle School, to have kids come over and learn from experiential growing of fruits and vegetables in that garden. So it could be a win-win opportunity to ensure that we're addressing some of the challenges in a food desert area, which in that community, having persons having access to fresh vegetables, as well as educating the young people on experimental gardening through various means of academic enrichment through gardening. And so we do have a proposal for a MOA, to develop the community garden. And the cost of the community garden will be on the donor to build the gardens. All the city is asked to do is to provide the fencing, the perimeter fencing to the community garden, and 2 parking spaces for those that will participate in the gardening program. Any questions? Yeah.
Randy, in the proposal, I've had an opportunity to talk to Mr. Ed and the gentleman out in Las Vegas, and of course you. What is the proposed cost of that project?
Okay, the only cost to the city would be about $30,000 for the quotes that we have for fencing, for the perimeter fencing. The specific costs and approvals would have to be agreed upon in terms of the quality of the material that would be put at the community garden, which would include the signage that will say Joseph S. Azar Community Garden at T.S. Martin Neighborhood Park.
So just in going back to what we just talked about, I'm assuming that this is going to go back through the process
Yes,
and
yes.
work its way back to us,
I
which
figure
would be good.
I'll be the first one to
Yep, right.
be
And then-
inducted into
Then the
the
second thing,
new
yeah,
rules.
good. Then the second thing I was going to ask is the sign design. I would like for that to also go through the new branding standards to make sure that we're all on board, and this gives us a good chance to kind of get our feet wet on the new brand and how we want to incorporate this
Yes,
into
and
our.
they are fully aware of the new branding process because we've been holding them off because I knew we were going through a new
Good.
branding.
Okay. Thank you.
But we wanted to do that primarily because they wanted to jump right in it, of course. And of course, we sort of felt, Randy and I sort of felt like it was the best thing for council, for this committee to hear this and to, of course, bring it to council. And it's all applicational. And because we've done applicational work, we can also get that done on that angle.
And once this, the application goes through and it, goes through the process, we get a MOA signed, and we will be able to, move forward then.
Okay.
Great.
Any other questions?
No, thank you for the
Dr.
update.
Bustles?
Well, thank you.
Peter?
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else you want to say, Larry? Larry. I'm talking about Randy. You look like a Larry, man. Thank you, Randy. Now, just procedurally, let us, can we look at this garden and procedurally, consensually say yes on it? Can we do that?
To go through the application
Ready to do
process.
the application process
We'll
first.
have
Wonder
12
why,
leads.
wonder
We'll
why
have
we
12
doing
leads
that?
next Thursday.
Wonder why we doing that? Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Let's talk about proclamations and keys. Gee whiz. I've had my share of proclamations. And you've had your share of proclamations and the issuance of keys. It was my understanding that we needed to be, that's an honor. And it's not just something that you hand out to someone because of name recognition. There needs to be some accomplishable goals, I think. What we've done, and we've been good at it. We've been good at it. Our staff has been good at putting together proclamations. I've done my share. I've had my share of delivering proclamations and keys to the city. I think there needs to be a formal policy that sort of indicates how a proclamation ought to be done and delivered, and a key given to the city. What's involved in that process? Pam, would you talk to us about that?
Yes, sir, absolutely. So you are correct. There's been lots of proclamations and keys that have been
I know.
distributed, and some at your request.
Yes, ma'am.
But we wanted to, and Shanique Belton, who is so good about keeping all of this on track, and her and public relations, marketing, media and marketing department work very hand in hand in getting these proclamations produced and getting these things presented to those individuals in the community who are requesting them, or who we want to highlight based on their their exceptional service to our community, those types of recognitions. And so what we have done in the past is there's a form that gets completed and there's a process, but we wanted to put this in writing, as you stated, Reverend McDowell, and having more of a policy, which you all have been so supportive of us putting these things together. So we, as you requested in one of our prior meetings, you asked that we put together a policy and procedure related to proclamations and keys. And so what we have in front of you is a draft of that policy and procedure for requesting proclamations and keys. And so what we wanted to do is provide that information to you all, for you all to review. And then I certainly want you all to have some time to look at it and review it, and then we would finalize this and have this in place moving forward. We'll still have a request process. There'll still be a form that is completed, similar to an application. And we'll still be able to do what we do, but this will have it more in writing and lined up. So this just outlines what proclamation and keys are, some general guidelines, some things that have to be accompanied with the request for a proclamation and keys, and then there's a procedure page that's associated with it. So we wanted to provide that to you because you all requested it.
That's correct.
We're providing that, and then we want to give you some opportunity to give us some feedback about what we've provided to you.
What do you think?
So when we see, like, week and month proclamations on the agenda, sometimes that's the first time I'm seeing that. Whereas Shanique has forwarded any community requests for like specific days and stuff to us. And there have been ones that we've said, no, this is too religious, or this is too whatever. Is there a distinction between those two? Because it feels like there are some that are proclaimed every year. That makes sense because they're either honoring staff or, you know, some of the things that we are
situation, yeah.
doing. But I'm just trying to understand, like, should they all be following the same process, or is there an exception? How does that typically get decided, or how do you envision that being decided under this updated policy?
So, I think it is a little bit different, you know, I'm gonna let Shanique speak to it, because she's the one who handles it. But sometimes, some of those you're referring to, Dr. Bustles, that are on our agenda, maybe staff initiated
Yeah.
proclamations related to the work that we do
So
as a
that would be
city.
separate, right? That would be a different process.
Yes,
Which
that's
makes sense.
currently
I
a-
just want to be very clear to the
Yes.
public that there's
Right,
reasons why we may do things
Makes sense to
every
me, too.
year
yes.
versus we may only do Child Abuse Prevention Month, which is an example in here, like 1 year that it's requested.
Right, so we would continue to have those different. There's an internal process for the proclamations that relate to the work that we do as a city. And then these would be requests that come into us from citizens.
That's correct.
So that would be what follows under this policy.
so-
We can make a reference
No.
to that if you think
I
that
think
provides
just having
clarity.
one line that, you know,
Okay.
there is or like whatever, it's under the city's discretion to, you know, release or announce proclamations related directly to core services of the city, or, I don't know what the right language is, but you see what I'm getting at.
Yes.
like-
It's a little different with keys, I think.
Yes, definitely a lower bar.
Yeah, it's a little different than keys.
Yes, sir. And we have tried to emphasize that keys are really the highest honor, and that is something that is really special. And then we've outlined some of the guidelines for those as well.
I think that's really what's important is kind of distinguishing between these different levels. And again, part of it is, you know, if everybody gets a key to the city, it's no longer special.
That's right.
So it really should be, like you said, I like the language in there, the highest honor, and make it where it is a special distinction. And again, I'm a big believer that the effort that goes into the highest honor should be a higher effort to match the higher
That's right.
honors. So I think this is a really good step in the
Have
right
we
direction.
been tracking everyone that we've given a key to?
Yeah, mostly. Come on, Shanique.
You've been summoned.
Good morning. We do track those. PR does a great job of keeping those on file for our office, for council's office as well. So we can always go back and ask, has a proclamation been issued before for a certain entity? So yes, ma'am.
Or a key.
Or key.
Or a key,
Right.
yeah.
Yes. Sometimes we have very last-minute requests for a key, so those are kind of kept internal. But we'll share those with PR going forward.
Now, the mayor may come in and say, I need 5 keys. He may come in and request a key.
Yes, sir.
And I think to be proactive, we need to make sure that all of what we do in terms of a key, because we got to remember, this is a high honor.
Of course.
And if we're going to trivialize that, then we're going to find ourselves in really a quandary. I think we're on the right track in terms of making this the highest honor. It's almost like it's almost like the Palmetto Star of Palmetto, or whatever. Order of the Palmetto.
Yeah, I would just like, just for us to, for our records, just to make sure we have a good idea of even those one-offs, so people that have requested keys. I mean, that's gonna happen, but
Oh,
I
yeah.
just would like for us to have record of that, so we have a general understanding of like the types of entities or people we are giving the keys out to. Cause then we can go back to a reference point if, for some example, we decide we don't want to issue a key, or we decide we do want to. I think that historical context, given that the mayor will have certain circumstances where there's a special guest
Well,
coming into town, he needs
absolutely.
to do it. I just think that tracking as much as possible is good. Or even just letting us know, like, hey, this weekend,
Yeah.
I don't know, Usher came into town, and we gave him the key to the city. I'd be okay with that. But I just want to know that he was given the key, yeah.
Is there anybody you're not okay with?
Oh, many people.
Well, I think it becomes a collaborative effort. Once upon a time, we didn't have that kind of effort in the midst of our colleagues. But this makes it collaborative, I believe. And this makes it, and it puts us in an arena where everybody knows that a person is being given a key to the city because what he or she has done and designated as the highest honor within the city. Okay. All right. Y'all feel good about that?
City manager about to say something.
Huh?
She was about to say.
I'm sorry, Ms. Wilson.
I think y'all are right on point, and I'm not going to delve too far in, what I'm sure the mayor will probably discuss with you all, but just hearing kind of what you're saying and that emphasis on the key being the highest honor, I do think that he has been looking at another symbolic gesture that may just be by him. And so since y'all having the discussion, and sometimes I think things get lost in translation a little bit, it probably would be, I guess, maybe a good thing to Dr. Bussel's point, because this will really be the formal act by all of council, and then he may now have this kind of one-off
Yeah, I
special
like that better.
medallion. I think it's like a
Yeah.
medallion or something that he's thinking about,
I think
so.
it's fair to have
the mayor
to
sometimes
have
has to
type of
do that.
leeway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely,
For sure.
absolutely.
But that may address, I think, what y'all are saying about if he needed to grab a key out of his closet or something and give it to somebody over the weekend. I think he's trying to come up with something that else he could use.
And that would make it even more prestigious, because then all of council has. supported
Exactly.
a specific key.
But just as long as all of us know
Yes, sir.
that that's the process.
Yes.
And that, Pam, if we could add on something, I mean, the mayor may do that. I mean, he may reach into his drawer and pull out a key and says, I need to do that. And that's fine, but it'd be certainly good if all of us knew exactly what's going on. And that there is a process in terms of how those things are handed out and keeping a record of that. I mean, I've done that several years, and that's keeping a record of the number of signs I put up in community. That's not the best thing. That's not one of the best things. I've enjoyed it. Let me just say it that way. I've enjoyed it. So, can we do that?
Yes, sir. We'll work on a process for communicating it to council. of
Okay.
Who's requesting the proclamation of the keys and
You
when they're
carry back to,
distributed.
that's for next month?
Yes, so we can, so we'll ask that you all review this policy and
Okay.
provide any feedback that you may have.
Okay.
And then we'll try and work on a process for documenting and communicating those requests out to you all.
In the procedure, we can add a section about communication and documentation, whatever works
Yes.
best for staff, the most collaborative way where PR or, Shanique's office or city manager's office can go and quickly take a look at something, whether it's spreadsheet format. But I think that having that history beyond maybe like city council minutes is gonna be helpful.
Great, yeah, we will add that. And if you all wouldn't mind just sending me back any edits or suggestions you have for
Okay.
for the draft that you all have in your packets. I would
Okay.
appreciate that.
Good.
Okay.
Good.
All right, well, that's all I have.
That's all?
Yes, sir.
You sure?
I'm positive.
Okay. Madam City Manager, anything? Peter?
No, sir.
Audrey? Just one thing I'd like to add. One of the things that has become very important and relevant in this city of ours is Bull Street. Bull Street is and has been and continues to be one of those projections where things are being done. Did everybody get one of those? It continues to grow and continues to bloom and blossom. I've had a conversation with Bob Hughes and Robert Hughes about, we've got the we've got the park there. We got the Page Ellington Park there. An African-American man who, an untrained architect, was responsible for building numerous buildings on the Bull Street property with Dr. Bull's help. He did that. One of the things that I thought we could do and wanted to do was to at least give the Bull Street property some idea of the relevancy of African-American history on that property. I've asked Robert to look at the possibility of naming one of the streets on the Bull Street property. And that's, and I think you got a copy of it. That's McDuff, what is that? That's, what's the name of that street? McDuff, Gregg Street. You see it there in underline? Gregg Street. To name that the Brian Newman Way. As you know, Brian Newman was very instrumental on the Bull Street property, or in the Bull Street property. It was Brian Newman who cast the deciding vote for Bull Street back during the day. And I think it would be a part of our history and a part of and what has taken place in Bull Street to name this piece of property, Bull Street. Now, this is a part, an applicational process. There's an applicational process of which that has to be applied for. Now, we've done several street namings. I've got a list, and persons have sent me a list. I don't know if it's been done in jest or whether it's been done otherwise. But I got a list of over 50 persons that we've assigned in our neighborhood street naming. Brian Newman is that type of person, and Bull Street is that kind of project, which would so designate the honoring of Brian Newman. Feedback. What y'all think? What you think, Doc?
I mean, I think that would be great. We just have to follow the process.
Yeah, we're gonna follow the process.
I
That's
think
gonna be
that you have a lot of support.
that's gonna be on the website, follow the process. So, yeah, I'm
What you
all-
think, Peter?
I'm all in.
Yeah, I
All
like the
agreed.
history and the context behind
I
why you
think
chose
I
that.
think it'd be a great tribute, and as long as, like Dr. Russell said, as long as we follow the process, I'm gonna be for a lot of this stuff,
That's right.
not against it.
That's right. So if we could applicationally follow the process,
Yes, sir.
follow the process, and I will certainly be in touch with Robert Hughes to make sure that we're fine. All right. Now, consensually, can we, no, I'm not going to say that. Nope. Until we agree on it. See that? Doesn't take a genius to figure this out. Okay, anything else? Well, I think this is it then.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, been moved and seconded that we adjourn.
All right, good work, everyone.
Thank you so much.